Hi, my name is Keith, and I'm known as the Florida Stone Man. And today I'm going to be talking to you all about why you might have enemies, why you have enemies, and why enemies appear into your life. This is an amazing and extremely interesting topic, and in the end of the day, you'll be very thankful they came into your life because they're there to make you very strong, and I'm going to talk all about that in this video. So, my content is specifically for people to move closer to God, or for people who are close to God and who are moving closer to God, or people who are just in any way, shape, or form moving themselves closer to God. And people of God sometimes ask themselves, why am I having these enemies? Why are they popping up? The answer is very cool. It's so that they make you stronger. So you uncover these new abilities and new skills about yourself to just essentially trample your enemies energetically. So basically, they don't bother you anymore. And so that any enemies that pop up in your future path never ever bother you again. And you have experience under your belt. And this is a really interesting video because Florida Stone Man teaches that you don't have enemies. Essentially, you don't. You really don't have enemies. Essentially, we are our own biggest enemy. But the thing is, when it comes to being our own worst enemy, it's because we let other people be our enemy. And sometimes those people, we let them for a good reason. Sometimes we let them for not a good reason. But essentially, we let people become our enemy in certain ways. How do we take care of enemies? Well, when you have an enemy, guess what you do way more often, or what you should be doing. Some of you don't do this, but when you have an enemy or someone tries to start conflict with you, you move yourself closer to God. You talk to God more often. You ask Him to remove the enemy, etc. But as time goes on and it seems like the enemy's not going away. It's like, okay, what's going on here? Well, look what you did the entire time you had the enemy. You've upgraded your mental skills. You upgraded your energy. You got new crystals. You have new armor. So let's just say, for people, and especially people who get black tourmaline from me, what's the best way to counter enemies? Energetically black tourmaline. Their hatred, their bad intent, everything about these people who are sending you dark energy before you didn't have the tourmaline. So, prayer alone doesn't do it. The Bible talks about that. But when you pray with action, that's a mean combination. When you pray and then you put in the work, guess what happens? Miracles happen. So, let's use an example. So, let's just say you're just praying, but you're not doing anything in the physical world to really back your prayer. So, you're just praying, right? But then you use a crystal that God made, such as black tourmaline, because He knows His people are going to have to sometimes use a tool that He made to defend themselves, and then the tool is blessed because you're praying. So when you use a tourmaline, especially when it's blessed, and I bless my tourmaline from FloridaStoneman.com, but the thing is, people are like, well, can I pray? And can I talk to God and use crystals? Yeah, that's a topic for a different video that I'll talk about more in the future. Especially when I unload on that topic and be like, okay. Because a lot of people think that, and it's really disappointing because people will say, oh, crystals are demonic. For people who are calling everything demonic, they have an agenda, and their agenda is to use the Bible against other people to fit them into their motives and to manipulate their opinions to get them to believe some kind of thing when that person doesn't read the Bible themselves. If you were to read the Bible yourself, you'd realize that Moses' brother Aaron, who's a high priest, had 12 sacred gemstones that were basically told for him to get, to unite tribes, to call down angels, to help improve his connection and other people's connections to the Lord. Who made the crystals? God made the crystals. What relevance are crystals to your enemies? When enemies are directing lots and lots of energies towards you, the energy alone from certain enemies or people who want to make you out to be their enemy can pull you down unless you're protecting yourself spiritually. So when you pray, plus when you use certain protections that you probably didn't use a crystal before you got attacked, and now that you're using the crystal, people in the future are not really attacking you anymore. Or even if they are, they're not noticing it. Let me give you an example. Onyx. Onyx is a very powerful crystal, but it dismantles threats before they get to you. If you weren't using a crystal, and the best a very good prayer that you can pray to call in angels is Psalm 91. So Psalm 91 helps basically extra angels be around you, and your current angels have extra armor. When you use this in conjunction with crystals, it's a very, very powerful combination. Now, why do we have these enemies in the first place? Because we're talking about crystals now. How do we get to the topic of crystals? It's because you have enemies to introduce you to a stronger version of yourself. So in the future, you don't have enemies, because that enemy that you're encountering, they probably got to the point where they're your enemy because you didn't defeat them earlier on energetically. How do you defeat an enemy energetically? How do you defeat an enemy energetically? You protect yourself. The best way to defeat enemies is to protect yourself and to move yourself closer to God. Why protect yourself? It's because God made certain protections for you to use, and as He takes care of the situation, in the meantime, guess what? Energetically, you're protected from that. You don't have to deal with that. The energy is not coming near you, and even this much energy, if it comes near you, is taken care of. God's taking care of everything for you. So when you do your part in protecting yourself and armoring yourself, then you deal a lot less with their energy, and you get to focus more on what matters, which is building yourself, helping people, moving closer to God in other ways than when enemies kind of move you closer to God. But essentially, you don't have enemies because they're defeating themselves. If you are without God and you have enemies, then you'll encounter much more intense energies because God's keeping most of that away anyway. When you are a person of God and when you are people of God, that's different than if you're not of people of God. You're more so in the hands of the enemy. You're more free game. If you don't believe that, there are certain occultists who have flat out said that the people that they went after, and I'm not going to say any names, but certain people who were at one time followers of the enemy, the main one, the devil that Michael put down, they admit, like, hey, we were, like, basically our shots were called off when it comes to people of God. Like, we had to stop certain missions, we had to stop certain ventures until the plans come to a stop when those kind of people or the entities they work with find out you are with the Lord. When the Savior backs you, then certain energies and entities can't get through. Okay? Now, and yes, my content moves you very much into your faith, into really authentic faith. Not automatic faith. A lot of times, one thing I have encountered is when people have all these problems and things are going on, it's because they have gotten very robotic and very automatic. So I say, okay, are you doing your prayers? Are you... when you're working with the crystals, are you in the right space energetically? And I'll find out certain people are just like, and reading prayers and just reciting information that's just automatic and it's not authentic. So, always move yourself closer to Him by keep checking yourself, keep progress checking, be like, okay. And when you do have an enemy pop up, like I said, the enemy, it's not about if they get removed because God's removing them as soon as you ask them and even before you ask them. Like, God, you will ask in your prayers, please remove these enemies, especially in Psalm 91. And then He's doing that, but why do these enemies still get through sometimes? Sometimes it's for you to kind of see what happens to people when they mess with you. Sometimes it's for you to develop skills. So if that enemy did not come into your life, you would not have you would not have a skill set. And maybe sometimes those enemies kind of move you towards a path that's very blessed. Okay? How can that be? Let's just say, there's several examples. There's one example where, let's just say you have a bad neighbor, but when you move, you accidentally bought a house that was an extremely rare buy, and now you're making millions a year from it because whatever profit of the house change, it could be anything. It could be any reason, but sometimes it's to move you out of a comfort zone so you get in a better zone so you're able to expand. Sometimes enemies are just there to push you more so on your path because you were off path, and off your path you encountered wolves. So if you were on your path to begin with, those wolves would not be on your path because they're afraid of what's standing behind you on the path, which is God. How beautiful is this topic? How beautiful is this video? Because you will encounter enemies in life, especially people who will talk bad. And how do you make an enemy? I've talked about this before. You don't have to do anything to have enemies. You don't have to do anything. Sometimes you being the most honest, beautiful, happy, excited, just zest for life person is enough to make an enemy simply because someone's envious of you. You have to understand, when you're vibing high, when you're doing amazing, when you're on your path moving closer to God, we live on the earthly plane. 100% of protections is occurring, but 100% of being like never having to face any adversaries doesn't exist. It's because in the world, we come across deeds, maybe we help people. Well, another giant reason you guys might have enemies sometimes is sometimes you can't relate to other people, or you can't help people because you never encountered it. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you're doing wonderful and amazing, and you encounter someone who's rotten, but you never had protections, you just prayed, or you thought you had protections, but they were kind of weak, and then someone's cursing you now, and now you have to put yourself together and be like, what do I do? You use a crystal such as Florida Stoneman's Black Tourmaline from floridastoneman.com, but when you wear a crystal such as Black Tourmaline, you don't have to deal with their energy anymore, and for the people you love, and you encounter, like, your friends and family, and those people are being hit by black magic, what are you going to do? You're going to tell them, hey, go to floridastoneman.com to get Black Tourmaline. Well, yeah, you will, because Black Tourmaline protects you from 100% of black magic. And that doesn't get through. Do you know how much easier your life is when you don't have to deal with other people's energy like that? Black magic, people will tell you to take it off, because nothing can get through it unless it breaks. But that's one example. Let's just say you have an aggressive enemy. You'll use a crystal such as Mexican Fire Agate. That just transforms your enemies. And I'm putting Mexican Fire Agate on my website very soon, guys, as an oil. The oil works. But so many good things coming this year. You ask yourself why you have enemies. It's mainly to make you stronger, to grant you new skills. Sometimes if you're just being very idle, sometimes it gives you a little bit of a boost when you have an enemy to just kind of energetically push them off of you. Maybe you're not the kind of person to have been able to push them off of you and reclaim your energy until that enemy came along and messed with you. Now in the future, when people try to take your resources, your time, your energy, your effort, your mental peace, just everything about you that you would like to defend, maybe if you weren't that person who was going to push them off back then, now you are. And now you have a lot less enemies, and to the point where even someone such as myself, I don't really have any enemies. When people make me out to be their enemy, I ask God to remove them. I pray over the crystals and I bless them with the help of my angels and the archangels and the 7. And the crystals are on autopilot as I do other things. I don't even think about my enemies. Same thing with you guys. Same thing for the people who got black tourmaline that counters black magic. There we go. People who got Black Tourmaline that counters black magic don't even think about black magic. They don't even care anymore. Instead of waking up constantly worrying, did someone curse me today? They're getting Black Tourmaline from floridastoneman.com, and that's something they don't think about. That's it. Certain crystals are so vicious against dark energy that that's something you no longer have to think about, but you would not know how to do that if you never came up in any kind of debate or any kind of butting heads with an enemy. This is pretty cool. So essentially, an enemy will make its way into your life to make you stronger so you don't have enemies anymore. Or so that anytime you do come across any enemy, you're just like, well, that mosquito was, it died pretty fast. Like that. I mean, you're just killing flies at that point. You defend your energy, and guess what happens when you are generated to be a person like that? You're someone who protects people who can't protect themselves. Some people live their entire lives with enemies, and they're so nice and so because people mix up being, I'm a nice person, I don't respond back to enemies. Well, there's no balance in that. If you are a person when you're nice and a beautiful person, but you don't know how to protect your enemy, you don't protect your enemy. You don't know how to protect your energy when an enemy comes along. There's no balance in that. And then people are like, well, I have to curse my enemies. No, that's a whole nother spectrum. When it comes to your enemies, the second you curse them is the second you get the same punishment as them. But if you actually think it out and be like, hey, instead of engaging in their energy, return the energy, ask God to take care of it, and then you're set. Your blessings pour in after that. And for the people who believe you have to curse your enemies, you're going to spend your time with your enemies if you do that. Your enemy's energy will be able to get in fully. And then you'll be busy until you're done learning your lesson. So if you'd like true blessings, surround yourself with energies that relate to being blessed. If you want to engage in your enemy's curses, and when people curse you out, when people yell and scream at you, let them do that by themselves, because they're on their own with their own karma. Maybe you're on your own, or your family and whoever you love is on your own with blessings, but they're on their own with curses. Pigeons don't concern. I made this little example. Hawks don't concern themselves with the opinions of pigeons. You don't have to mix your energies with someone who's trying to get you to be on their level. Give it to God, move closer to God, and practice standing your ground when it comes to defending your energy. Stick up for yourself, and you'll be able to stick up for others, but do it in a way of light, and what you will see is everything right. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments section. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Ciao!